Okay, let's get it. Black girl magic dripping. Yeah, she's on a mission. Keeping our culture lifted. Now you can watch and listen to Tammi Mac. Tammi Mac. Oh, what show is that? It's the Tammi Mac Show on Fox Soul.
Tammi Mac, hey, Tammi Mac, yeah. Ooh, that Tammi Mac. Tammi Mac, hey, so you know it's Tammi Mac, hey.
Welcome to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Hello, everybody. I'm Tammi Mac. It's nice to meet you. And if you're a soulmate and you're a loyal soulmate, thank you for coming back tonight. I sure appreciate y'all. Look, some people have dedicated their lives to careers in medicine, law, spirituality, myself, media, but others have dedicated their lives to justice and have chosen to take their fight to the streets, y'all. That's where them fights need to be. We see them on the front lines, but rarely do we get a glimpse of what goes on in their personal lives and how their activism impacts their friends, their family, and them personally. Tonight, the business of being Black is the life of an activist. Please welcome Professor and co-founder of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles chapter, Dr. Melina Abdullah. Hi, Dr. Melina.
How are you, Tammy? Thank you for having me.
Welcome back to the show. I appreciate it, and I'm honored every time you say yes.
Thank you.
Executive Director and founder of Operation Restoration, Sarita Stibe. Hi, Serena.
Hi, Tammy. Thank you for having me.
Activist and poet Quinn Townsend Riley is here. Hi, Quinn.
Hi, Tammy. Thanks for having me.
And the director and co-founder of Dream Defenders, Sierra Taylor, on board with us tonight. Ladies, the first question that we ask on the Tammi Mac Show every night is why? Why should Black people care? And so I ask each of you ladies tonight, why should Black people care about the life of an activist? Dr. Melina, you kick us off.
Sure. Well, I think that activism, as we call it, but also organizing, which is deeper than activism, right? It's about the things that we do that are behind the scenes, the constant components of the struggle. I think that really for me, what it is heeding our sacred duties, that we have inherited a world, we have inherited space that was fought for and victories won by those who walked before us. And activism and organizing is really about making the world better, making sure that we honor our ancestors and leave a legacy for our children that is befitting them. And so we should care about activists and organizers because we have stepped into this calling, stepped into this sacred duty, and we're asking everyone else to also join us in this work, which for most of us is not actually our job. Like for me, I have a whole different job, but this is my sacred duty. This is my calling. This is how I honor my grandmother. This is how I can say the name Mama Harriet Tubman and do so in a way that is worthy of her, or I pray that it's worthy of her. And so that's why people should care.
I love that. It's heeding our sacred duty. Wow. Like now I feel like I'm not living my life purposefully, Dr. Melina, when you say that. I mean, that holds a lot of weight. It really is a sacred duty.
But I'm sorry, Tammy, but you are. So like, we also need to like debunk the idea that activism and organizing means we all do the same thing, right? So I'm coming from this protest in the name of Anthony McLean, who was murdered by Pasadena police. And I was grateful to stand alongside the families of George Floyd, the family of Kendrick McDade, and the family of Anthony McLean, among others. I was grateful to be able to speak to a crowd and to uplift Anthony McLean and to offer demands and say, this is why we have to transform the world. But as I stepped back from the mic, what held that group together was a sister playing music, right? Who opened us up was your sister and mine, Sister Dominique DePrima, who grounded us in the right spirit. And so what you're doing is organizing by offering a platform for this conversation. So all of us, one of the greatest organizers of all time is a woman named Ella Baker, who was the executive director of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, who sometimes got into conflicts with the men of the civil rights movement. But what she said is movements require group-centered leadership, not leader-centered groups. And what that means is whatever gifts, talents, and resources you have, you bring those to the movement, and that is heeding your sacred duty. So we're grateful to you that you're offering your media platform as an offering to your people.
Wow, that's knowledge right there. That's knowledge, sis. Thank you. Sarita, why? Why should Black people care about activists?
I think that Black people should care about activists because everyone who is a Black person in some level, some way, some shape has been an activist for a cause. We all know that whether you are representing yourself on your job or you having to advocate for yourself in healthcare or wherever it is that us as Black people show up, that everyone should care about activists because we all have to be an activist and an advocate at certain times. I really appreciated what Dr. Melina said, but just to add to the person who I look to get my direction a lot of times is Miss Angela Davis. And when she stated that she will no longer, accept things, that she will change the things that she cannot accept, I felt like she was speaking into my soul because in the work that I do in the social justice realm of advocating and activating bases around currently and formerly incarcerated women and girls, I think that because of the way that we are treated in society upon release and while we are incarcerated, that I definitely cannot accept how we are treated. So I must change the things that I can't accept. And a lot of times it feels like life or death situations that we come against. And I think that you have to care about the activists who are trying to separate life from death and not bringing our people as a whole into an early death.
Ooh, even though it may be or may mean an early death for the activist, him or herself.
Absolutely.
That's deep right there. Quinn, I got to ask you, I'm Black. I face the same issues you face, but why should I care about you and your activism, girl?
I feel as if Black people should care about activism because it is directly related to our liberation. Being Black is an act of resistance. Being a Black woman is a sign that I am surviving against many of the state-sanctioned violence that has consistently tried to mute, tried to disassemble, tried to disintegrate me and my body. And being a part of BYP 100, I have learned that my liberation is tied with others' liberation through the intersectionality as a Black queer woman. And so when we think about love, when we think about equity, when we think about inclusion, I don't want just people just to care about activism. I want them to rejoice in it. And I want people to be glad that people are protesting, to be glad that people are marching, to be glad that people are walking. As Dr. Melina stated, it's something ancestral, it's something that our ancestors and foremothers have done before us, and we will continue to do for our future. So don't just care, but celebrate it, encourage it, engage in it in the way that you have the capacity to do so.
Yeah, celebrate it, encourage it. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Sierra, let people know that you are the director of Code Pink and Code Pink's director of cultural strategy. So I want to make sure that that's clear so that everyone knows. Sierra, why should Black people care about activists?
Thank you, Tammy. And it's all good. We're all part of the same struggle. I am a part of Code Pink as the director of cultural strategy. And I think that I just really appreciate you for bringing together all of us to actually talk about what it means to be engaged in struggle as organizers, and to be able to, demystify what it means to be in struggle, because so often it's like, oh, this one individual who's just so great. And we really want to lift up that everyone has the ability, and it's needed for all of us to step into our leadership and our power and struggle. And I would say that why people should care about this is because we're tired of getting our behinds kicked. It's time for us to actually know who we are, know what we're up against, and know that what it takes to actually win against these, greedy people who believe in profit over people is that we have to unite all of those who are hurting. And so thank you for having us. I'm really excited about this conversation.
I'm excited about this conversation too. Like I told you all, I have so many questions that are not on the page tonight that this is going to require more time than an hour, because I have always been fascinated with activists. And I just Stevie Wonder celebrated his birthday recently, and I had a chance to interview him on the radio. And I asked him, I said to him, how can you fight your whole life? You know, it just seems so taxing. It seems so tiring. It seems so repetitious and almost purposeless when you're living an entire life of fight. I think about John Lewis. I think about Martin Luther King. I think about Rosa Parks. I think about all of these people and then some who have Maxine Waters, the people who are in Congress now, like they've been fighting for a very long time. And I just wonder how it must be when you live a life of fighting for rights that, much like Dr. Martin Luther King said, you may never see come to fruition. We're going to talk about that when we return on the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. Don't go anywhere, y'all. We'll be back. Welcome back to the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul, where tonight the business of being Black are activists. Yes. And I've got some sisters with me tonight who are out there doing their thing for us, y'all, for us. So show some love, please respect. Tonight, the business of being Black is the life of an activist. So we have professor and co-founder of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles chapter, Dr. Melina Abdullah, executive director and founder of Operation Restoration, Sarita Steib, activist and poet Quinn Townsend Riley, and the director of Code Pink, Sierra Taylor, is here with us as well. So I left off, ladies, talking about fighting your entire life. And I know, Sarita, you was like, woo, woo. So I will let you speak about that. How does one fight for their entire life, or choose to fight for their entire life for justice that they may never even see happen?
Yeah, Tammi, that's a great question. The way that I think about it, or I conceptualize it, is that you have to fight for things that you may not live to see, because you're not fighting because you want to actually visualize it or see it yourself. Most activists don't create and organize and activate bases of folks because of something that they personally want, or they're doing it for themselves. I think that the activists who are the most successful are individuals who are actually able to look at something as a larger picture and are fighting for the greater good. There are two things that I always try to keep in front of me, is that I never know who dreams are tied to mine and who has to come about in order to change the world in a way that it needs to be changed, that is directly tied to how I show up every single day. So as Sierra mentioned, if I don't step into my leadership and into my power, I don't know whose voice I'm silencing by not doing what it is that I'm called and I'm supposed to be doing. And then second, I don't think that John Lewis, 50 years ago thought that he would see the world that he lived in prior to his death, or Rosa Parks or Martin Luther King or any of those folks, because they were fighting for something that they hadn't even saw, or they didn't even know it was a possibility that it could exist.
They never even conceptualized it in a real way.
Right. They never, because they had nothing to compare it to. So to see where they were to where they were 50 years later had to be an awesome and amazing feeling. And knowing that their kids did not have to grow up in the same manner that they grew up in their grandchildren. So I think that, a life of service definitely is the best life to live. But me, I get excited about thinking about the world 50 years from now and how it will be for my kids or my grandkids, or, people that I care about not having to have the same struggles, that I have. But if we know that systemically systems recreate themselves, and they have been doing so over the last 400 years, everybody would want to get involved to fight, because, survival of the fittest states, and it dictates that things will find a way to survive. So if we don't interrupt that survival process, our kids may not be fighting the exact same fight, but they'll be fighting the same systemic and oppressive issues that we fight. So that's why I think that we get up every day and do what we do.
Quinn, how do you resolve wanting to fight at such a young age, for the rest of eternity until you die?
I come from a long lineage of Black women that have pretty much surmounted the unsurmountable. I come from a family of Black people that continue to push forward, and the level of optimism and the level of faith, right? That mustard seed size faith that I feel as if Black people ancestrally have. Some people may call it a bit naive or to have that level of optimism, but I think the fact that the past has shown us how powerful and how progressive and how positive things can be in the next 50 years, in the next 100, in the next 5, for my future children, for my great grandchildren, is something that I continue to fight for. My dream would be too small if it just considered me in it. My dream consists of you. My dream consists of other people's children. My dream consists of my neighborhood, communities that I haven't even seen like to live in yet. So I think we have to really expand and really reimagine what is it that we're trying to activate as activists? What are we trying to organize as organizers? What are we trying to dream as dreamers? And that radical compassion is required for that. That's the fuel, right? The future is the fuel that we use to go ahead and keep going. So that's something that helps me. I never do it for myself. I always do it for other people.
That's a great way to see it. If my dreams only consider myself, then my dreams are way too small. Way too small. I remember somebody asking me if I had one wish, what would it be? Or, the whole genie in a bottle thing. And typically, people ask for health and they ask for money, things like that. And I thought to myself, if I could have anything, why would I want something that only affected me? Like literally, you're saying I can have anything? It would be mighty selfish of me. In the words of Sojourner Truth, it would be mighty selfish of me, to get my little portion and then not care about anybody else's. I want to go to the chat room real quick and see what they're talking about. Kim Possible, our soulmate, says, mental health of activists are sadly overlooked. We need to give back by looking out for them. She's concerned about your mental health. Dr. Molina, how does your mental health play out, in particularly in situations that become really heightened during seasons of protest? Because there are seasons of protest.
Right. There are seasons, and then there's also the ongoing protests. So, sometimes the cameras turn away, but the struggle never stops. And I just want to uplift. I thought that was really, really brilliant what Quinn just shared, that the future is the fuel. The future is the fuel. So these radical imaginings, these radical visions for our future, what we're trying to build that's not tethered to the what is really what motivates us and mobilizes us to struggle every day. And yes, for the rest of our lives. I plan to die fighting. Right? I plan to die, and not soon, right? I plan to die fighting, right? And so when we talk about mental health, I think it's important that we think about it in terms of community care. We say a chant. I know BYP 100 says the same chant. Many of us say the chant that we call Asada, where it says, we must love and protect one another. So we are seeking to build a really beautiful movement where we love and protect one another, where we take on the care for one another, where my children have a million aunties and uncles who care for them. I'm a mother of 3 children, right? And so I can't do it. I'm a single mama of 3 children, right? I can't do it only by myself. So we're building a beautiful movement. And this concept of community care, of loving and protecting one another, is part of what we're building. And for me, being a part of this movement, having found my sacred duty, my calling, really does feed my mental health. So I get life when I go to a police commission meeting and cuss out the police chief. That makes me feel good, right? Okay. And then being in community with everybody else and circling up and saying Asada and, doing all this work, it actually feeds my mental health. So I think that we as activists in this moment, as organizers in this moment, are working and seeking to build a movement that's also restorative for us, that's not depleting. And I don't want to say that in a way that sugarcoats things, because there are there are real sacrifices that we have to make. I've been to jail 8 times, never planned to go, right? But get snatched up, right? In the last year, I've had a gun pointed at my chest. The person who pointed the gun at my chest, the husband of the former district attorney who I got life from ousting, right? Her husband pointed a gun at my chest and told me, "I will shoot you," right? My home was swatted in August with, my children inside. Police surrounded us with AR-15 rifles. Those are things that are traumatic.
Dr. Molina, I want to say those are things that probably deserve some mental health assistance, right?
But we have community care. So I'm lifting that up, not to cry for myself, not to mourn it, to recognize the trauma and to say it was my community that came to my aid, that still is coming to the aid of my children to make sure they have therapy, right? And so loving and protecting one another. When we say that Asada chant, that's something that we operationalize. I still feel overwhelmed by the level of support that I continue to receive by the community that recognizes the sacrifices that I make and that the movement makes in order to push us forward to freedom.
I want to move into the soulmates again because they are in this chat, y'all. Ursula O says, we never take into account the sacrifice that the family of activists suffer. Also, the sacrifice their loved ones suffer. And that's what Dr. Molina was just talking about. Incog says, activists or organizers are taking the brunt of the abuse for the collective. So we should be grateful for those who are willing to fight on our behalf. Thank you, Incog. Yolanda, never considered myself an activist, but I fight for the students I work for. Some have no voice, no mom, no dad. So when they come to me, they become my children. My children I feed, advocate for. And then let's see, Dr. King's family is still paying the price for his activism. I am grateful to them for that. Yes, Quinn, the future is the fuel. They're giving you some love, Quinn. They're giving you some love over here. Yes, Sarita, we must walk in our purpose because it is attached to other individuals. So Narcia Cox is giving you some love, Sarita. Andrew says, talk that talk, ladies. And Keepin' Nettie says, thank you for your self-sacrifice, ladies. And then House of Berry says, I love you, Quinn. Lewis Powell says, Dr. Abdullah is the greatest. The greatest. So they are chiming in a big way in this chat. We're going to take a quick commercial break, come right back, because I want to find out exactly how these ladies got tied to activism. What was the spark that created the fuel and then the flame? We'll talk about it next on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul, where tonight the business of being Black is the life of an activist. We've got to find out how you all decided that this was your calling, your purpose, or your life's work. And I want to start with you, Sierra. So how did you figure out, what was the spark that said, this is what I will be doing for perhaps the rest of your life?
Yeah, and thank you. I'm appreciating this conversation so much. I'm a notes person, so I'm over here taking notes. But I think it's important for folks to know that leaders aren't born. Leaders are created out of material conditions, out of experiences, out of history. And so for myself, I'm a millennial. So I've seen some things, despite what Gen Z believes. But, like we saw the fall of the Berlin Wall. We saw, Y2K. We saw 9/11. We saw Columbine. We saw, Bush declare war on Iraq. I mean, Tupac and Biggie, OJ trial, all of these things, the media, the politics, religion, are what really shapes us, our relationship to each other, our relationship to our work and our society. And so, it's almost going back on, this last point that was raised around mental health, because I think the last time I was really like, okay, I'm done, I'm out, was when Eric Garner was killed. It had been, I was really politically activated in high school around the Iraq War. And, I got involved in issues around you know, like pay for service workers and living wage for people who work at colleges, to LGBTQ rights, to, you know, Trayvon Martin being killed. But for some reason, when Eric Garner was killed, that was the moment where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I just fell into this deep depression. You know, I tried all the things, yoga, calling on the ancestors, saging myself, you know, like all of it, crystals, I've done it all. I still do it. But I feel like what really saved me from that point of giving up and losing faith in the movement, and just seeing the brutality that continued, was political education. The understanding of our history, the revolutionary history that we have in this country, especially when you're talking about the Civil War and Reconstruction, you know, that's the closest that this country has ever come to revolution. And so when I think about what keeps me in the fight, it has to be that revolutionary history. And I think, like everyone has said, the importance of community and organization. And so, you know, all of those experiences are what makes me, and those are also the experiences that keep me going in this work.
So Rita, what got you here? What was the thing that made you say, this is what I'm doing, I can't take it anymore?
Well, I think much like Sierra, I've always been a fighter, you know, by nature. So I feel like I was born a fighter.
Do you remember your first fight?
Oh, absolutely. I remember my first fight. Somebody I love to eat, you know, people from Louisiana love to eat. And as a very young child, I wanted a piece of food off of somebody else's tray at school. And she didn't want to give me the food. She rather throw it away because she didn't like going up for her food, you know, her tray to be empty. And I took the food off her tray and I ate it. And we had this fight because I never forget, it was a hash brown for breakfast on the tray, and she didn't want to give me the hash brown. She wanted to throw it away, and I like hash brown. So we fought because I ate her hash brown that she wanted to throw away.
So your fight started with hash browns. Okay. Because honestly, she was going to throw the food away. So within that lies literally a social justice fight.
Yes.
Yeah.
At 18, I was voted the class revolutionist. So for class night, that was my award. So I always was fighting for something. I think, though, my experience of being incarcerated at the age of 19 and remaining incarcerated until the age of 29 really shaped how I fought, and understanding that I didn't have to fight in a way that brought harm to myself, but I could fight to actually eradicate and abolish, you know, systems. I always talk about how, like, all of the systems that were created essentially started in Benjamin Franklin's living room prior to him being an abolitionist. The oldest educational institution, one of the oldest hospitals, and of course the oldest prison were all drawn up in his living room in Pennsylvania by a bunch of white men that did not create any systems for us to be inclusive. And if I know that, and I fundamentally understand that no system was built for us, if I'm a true abolitionist at heart, that means that I have to abolish all systems. So even once prisons exist in museums and hospitals no longer exist in the way that they exist, and educational institutions, and us as academics or professors or anybody who believes in educational systems are not believing in education traditionally and taking these gold standards and saying that this is what it has to be, knowing that it wasn't built for Black people, women, queer folks, anybody other than white men, then we will know that we have to abolish everything around us and reimagine, you know, what that looks like. But to Sierra's point, I think my defining moment too of saying that I know I had to, you know, take a mental health break and then got rejuvenated was actually George Floyd, because I was pregnant at the time and I knew that I could not go out to these peaceful protests, and me being pregnant and still feeling like I didn't want to be peaceful, you know, because I was tired. And I'm like, I'm gonna go to the people's protest and I'm gonna mess it up. We're gonna be on the news in the morning because I want to fight. I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm mad, and I'm not in a space to be peaceful. So I might as well stay at home. So I didn't participate in any of the protests because mentally I was not in the headspace to be peaceful. So I stayed at home, you know, but once I was able to like gather my thoughts and regroup and begin to think about things. I think what gave me, my motivation to say, you know what, this is not about you. You can't make it personal, was when his daughter spoke and talked about how his death changed the world and how it gave everybody, the courage and the reassurance to go on. And, it says truth comes out of the mouth of babes. And that was definitely a babe that gave me some more, wherewithal to say, yeah, I got to keep fighting and stay with this. But I think we all get to certain points. And then we also have to name and talk about how us as Black women are treated in the movement by our Black men. And that's a whole nother stress.
That's a whole nother, that's a whole nother show, actually. Quinn, Serena says you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. But when did your first fight begin? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah, I got in a fight in elementary school with a girl named Imani Graham.
Okay.
We fought because she called me Barney. And so I had to let her know, like, look, my mama said you hit me, I'm gonna hit back. And so the assignment was given and I completed the assignment. Wow. That was my first time fighting. That was my last time fighting outside of like physical stuff. But in terms of organizing and activism, I definitely have to give credit to the man who really put the fire in my throat, Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright. I'm a product of Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago. And so the teachings of his radical Black theology really just gave me this beautiful Afrocentric image of how Jesus is an abolitionist, how Jesus was a man of color that was murdered by state-sanctioned violence, how Jesus literally said, whatever you do to the least of these, you do unto me. And so when I do the work of BYP 100, I feel so divinely connected that I feel as if I'm literally living out God's word in terms of being a servant of God. So when I see people that are sex workers, people that my trans siblings, people that currently have less than what I have, I feel so compelled and so convicted to keep doing and keep yelling and to keep fighting and to keep protesting. But definitely the name that definitely launched my voice would definitely have to be Sandra Bland. Because of the blatant sexism and the discrimination and the silence that I feel as if was too deafening to me. And when we think about the murders of Black women, especially Corinne Gaines and our Black trans siblings, it just really hurts my feelings to know that the names like George Floyd and Trayvon Martin are going to continue to live on because people have this idea of a perfect victim. Where somebody who was like a student or somebody who was deemed innocent, it seems that their life should have been spared. But when you have a Black woman who was defending her son and she was shot in front of her child, people choose to demonize her and her humanity is stripped away from her because she's violent. And that also is married to the archetype that is absolutely given to Black women all the time in terms of our anger. And people don't want to see us get angry because we're revolutionary. And people don't want us to see us get upset because we are literally weapons that can be used for social equity. And so you don't want to light the bomb that can actually create something very, very different. And so that's something that did for me.
Things tend to change when Black women get upset.
Oh,
from
definitely.
the smallest to the largest thing, things seem to change when Black women get upset. It's interesting you mentioned the perfect victim. It does seem that there always has to be a perfect victim. And so I acknowledge you saying that because they always try to discredit Rodney King, George Floyd, Eric Garner. It's like these people weren't living these great lives, so we killed them. Really? Is that how we are? But it also makes me think about the movement of the 60s when Claudette Colvin initially was supposed to be the person to start the bus boycott. And because she was pregnant, because she was dark skinned, she was not able to fuel that fight. And thus we know Rosa Parks, but she worked with Rosa Parks. And so it's interesting that there always has to be the perfect victim. And I think America needs to revisit the system in terms of that, because just because you don't live a perfect life does not mean you should die. We're going to take a quick break. Come right back on the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. Tonight, the business of being Black are activists. We love them. We love them because they live for us, the people. Yes. There is an activist that is definitely been the forefront of the most recent protest, Tamika Mallory. She joined Jada Pinkett Smith's talk show, Red Table Talk, to talk about how Black women feel invisible in our society. Let's take a look at that clip.
There, but my feelings are not always valued.
Yes.
My opinion of things, I'm constantly having to raise my temperature in order for people to know that I know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I want to know, Sierra, do you agree with that? Are Black women invisible? Because we seem to make the loudest noise.
I guess my question would be is, what circles and movement are you a part of, and what are the politics of the organization and movement that you're a part of? I've definitely been in spaces where I've been ignored, I've been spoken, over, and I've found that when I'm in those spaces, those people usually don't have a certain level of politic as I do. And I think it's really important being in the movement, again, to understand history, but to also have a political line. What is acceptable? What are we working towards? What are we building towards? And how do we, make like the future here and the now, how we want to relate to one another. And so, it just depends on what organization that you're in. I've honestly, and I don't want to, there's definitely experiences that are disproportionately not like mine, but I've been really grateful to be in a movement like the Poor People's Campaign, or like the National Union of the Homeless, or the University of the Poor, where I've actually been able to, through my relationships with organizers, or I call OGs, not everyone who's older is an OG, but people who have been in the movement and know what it's about, particularly those Black men, I found that they have healed my relationships with Black men overall. And again, it goes back to the politic. And I think you can usually find what space that you want to be in and the direction you want to go in with how people show up in those spaces.
That's interesting. You said Black men have healed your relationships with Black men?
Black men in the movement, Black men with a revolutionary, anti-patriarchal, anti-capitalist politic, who understand that if we are to put people over profit, property, if we are to make the most for the least of these, as I believe Quinn talked about, then that includes women. And so I think that politic really guides those relationships. And so, yes, through my work within the movement with revolutionary Black men, it has healed some elements and past trauma and experiences that I've had with Black men.
Excellent. Dr. Molina.
Wait, Ms. Tammi, I just want to add really quickly. Like, I also think that it's environmentally based too, because I think a lot of times where you're geographically placed allows you to have a certain perspective of privilege, and not really understanding that before anything changes, hence the South must go first. And until we heal the South and change what's going on in the South, that we will all have those same type of experiences. Because here in the South, patriarchy for us rules, deep South, Louisiana, Texas, and all of these different places. And I think that there are a lot of resources and a lot of focus that are placed on.
Yeah, that's why the voter laws are changing, because I do believe that those patriarchal kind of means are seeing that their demise is ahead. And I believe that they are trying their best to make sure that it remains intact, so that they will not be the underdogs of this earth. Would you agree with that, Gwen?
Yeah, I definitely would agree to Sierra's point as well, in terms of that it depends on the ecosystem, in terms of the organization that you're a part of. BYP, our mission is a Black queer feminist lens. So I was already saturated with the comfortability and safeness of being within my multiple identities and the intersection that they have. However, I have been to several actions in Chicago where Black cis men have occupied space that they shouldn't have, where they have taken the mic from other Black women, or they just have dominated the scene and have reaped the awards that Black women have sown, Black trans women have sown. And I see that consistently, even with this current uprising. You see a lot of cis folks and a lot of Black men get more accolades and get more recognition for just being all awareness, all of this revolutionary. But if a Black woman does it, she is dehumanized. She is treated as if she's angry. She is considered a bit emotionally unstable to even consider this life of social justice. So I think that's interesting in terms of contradicting.
I want to make sure that people understand when you say cis.
Oh, cisgendered. Cisgendered.
Yeah, but I want to make sure that people understand what cisgender means, because this is a new world for a lot of people. And so they don't understand that cisgender means the gender that you were assigned at birth.
Yes. So when we have this current moment that we're in, where we see our transgendered siblings experience oppression, and there is silence from our cisgendered folks that are also in the movement, we don't see the temperature rising that Tamika, I really like the way she said temperature rising, from these other organizations, the level of unrest when we have our trans siblings experience murder or state-sanctioned violence. Right. I think that's something that should also be questioned, brought into place.
So but I also do agree. It doesn't just happen down south. It happens, Dr. Melina, you can definitely speak to this with all of your West Coast activism. Are women silenced? Are we looked over? Are we lost in the sauce?
I mean, we live in a world that is white supremacist, patriarchal, heteronormative capitalist, right? So there is absolutely patriarchy embedded in that kind of ruling system. So yeah, there's efforts to silence us. I remember when Black Lives Matter first began and Black Lives Matter was birthed here in Los Angeles, right? I remember that many of us who were not just women, but moms, we were attacked for our mothering. How dare a mother, say this or move here with her kids or do that? And that was absolutely about attacking us as Black women, right? And I think that I'm very proud of the way in which we're building movement that rejects that says that if we're going to be abolitionists, which I think all of us in this call, we're not reformists, we are abolitionists, right? It means, like one of you all was saying, it means abolish everything. I think that might have been Sarita saying that, right? That we have to abolish everything, including abolishing these gender relationships, right? Including abolishing the ways in which, our gender roles are assigned. And so
literally everything.
Yeah, and abolition, I mean, Sarita also lifted up one of my favorite people as well, Dr. Angela Davis. Dr. Davis talks about abolition. Abolition absolutely means upending unjust systems, but more than that, it means birthing new systems. So it doesn't mean that we stop dealing with men, right? It doesn't mean that we stop dealing with gender nonconforming folks if we're women, right? If we identify as women, it means that we reimagine what those relationships look like and build towards newly structured relationships. And so I think that's what we're doing through abolitionism and this movement.
Dr. Melina, there was an incident that you referred to earlier in the show where former DA Jackie Lacey, Lacey's husband, former California DA, Jackie Lacey's husband, pulled a gun on you. We have a clip. Want to take a look at that clip real quick.
Get off.
Good morning.
Get off of my porch. I will shoot you. Get off of my porch.
Can you tell Jackie Lacey that we're here?
I don't care who you are. Get off of my porch right now. We're calling the police right now.
Good.
Tell us what happened that morning.
So we'd been protesting Jackie Lacey for more than 3 years. She's the district attorney of Los Angeles County, or was the district attorney of Los Angeles County. She signed off on the murders of 634 people at the hands of police, refusing to prosecute the police who kill our people. And so we decided, as she was running for her third term in office, after we'd been protesting her for 3 years, invited her to community meetings, that if she wasn't going to come to the community, she's been specifically sidestepping Black community, we were going to go to her house. And this was not the first time we'd been to her house. we went to her front yard, we poured libation, we did a land acknowledgement, and then I went to her front door to ring her bell, to invite her out to meet with about 50 of us who were standing outside demanding the community meeting. And what we got was David Lacey pointing a gun just inches from my chest and threatening to shoot me. And we met that with more organizing and were successful in getting her removed as the district attorney. So she is now former Los Angeles County District Attorney Jackie Lacey. And, that was a sacrifice, but, we always say when we fight, we win. And so we won that battle.
We're going to take a quick break and come right back on the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul, where tonight the business of being Black are Black activists. And I can't get enough of Dr. Melina Abdullah, also Sarita Stibe. Sarita, I am saying your last name right, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Activist and poet Quinn Townsend Riley and Sierra Taylor. Thank you all. Real quick, I want to get into what you're doing right now. We'll get about 30 seconds because Quinn wants to bless us with something before the show's over. So Sierra, what can we look forward to? Where can we find Code Pink?
Well, you can find Code Pink at codepink.org. I work on most of our anti-imperialist work. I do want to mention, because I do think it's a very important time in our society to really start building a large movement of people who are poor and dispossessed. And so I invite folks to check out the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for a moral revival. There are 140 million poor people in this country. And since the pandemic has been waged, billionaires have gained trillions of dollars while our people, the 99%, if it were, continues to suffer, not having access to the vaccines, not having access to healthcare, clean water, a healthy environment. And so what we're really trying to do is we're calling for a moral revival. And how do we actually engage?
Where can people go? Where can people go?
If you go to poorpeoplescampaign.org,
Perfect.
That would be great. Yeah.
Quinn, I don't want to miss out on this beautiful treat you have for us. So I'm going to go ahead and let you, please give it to us. And then I'll go to Dr. Melina and Sarita.
Thank you again for this opportunity. I just want to share this poem called Black Girl Magic. I am denouncing my Black girl magic. This blessing and burden, holy and sacrificial. At any moment I could disappear and no one will come looking for me. I could die in a cell, but the trick is I did not kill myself. I can make you think that I'm fine and healthy when my body has been kidnapped for sex cults. People think that my blood shines, that my bruises sparkle. My body has been poked, prodded, procured to find reason for my very extraterrestrial existence. My body has been raped, robbed, run through, run over like railroad track. Henrietta lacked mouth, more hole than heaven, breasts, more toy than nutrients, thighs, more alleyway than guarded gates. I hate being told that I have Black girl magic. Because I could stand here decomposing in front of all of you, but you wouldn't believe me because Black girls don't cry, we don't die, we magic, a lie that I have swallowed. A lie that I'm tired of carrying on my back. Tired of being raped and no acknowledging my pain. Tired of dying and no one saying my name. You too, while listening to this poem, still don't see me. You see a Black girl miraculously enchanting. So when I cry, it's a spectacle. When I die, it's sacrificial. How many more of our bodies must be buried for you recognize that we are real? When Corinne Gaines was shot in front of her son, it wasn't glitter that oozed out of her body, it was blood. Sandra Bland did not disappear, she was murdered. Jessica Savage is not okay, and to this day, there are still 219 Nigerian girls still missing. Black women are not superheroes in capes. Invincible to pain, we have simply adapted to our chains of menstrual, and men and their cycles. Find every strong Black man as a Black woman that he used for practice. Black women are like stars, dying combustible balls of flame. Please say our name. What do you have of this magic if everyone is using it but me? Feeling Lyles, Rakia Boyd, Natasha McKenna, Maya Hall, Breonna Taylor, Ma'Khia Bryant. I promise you I can die just like you. I could cry just like you. But no one cares as long as there's a show. Thank you so much. That's that piece. Thank you.
Ooh,
thank you.
No one cares as long as they're at the show. Where can we get more information on Operation Restoration, Sarita?
Yes, we have a website. It's www.or-nola.org. Operation Restoration. We are headquartered in New Orleans, but we do work across this country, and we focus on formerly and currently incarcerated women and girls. We have a full-time staff of 17 women, 15 programs. 80% of my staff is formerly incarcerated women. So we really, really walk the walk and talk the talk and support women during and after incarceration.
Dr. Molina, Black Lives Matter, LA chapter.
Well, our work is at blacklivesmatter.com. LA chapter is at blmla.org. And we are working to take out the police associations that are killing our people. Go to endpoliceassociations.com.
endpoliceassociations.com. Thank you so much, Dr. Molina, Sierra, Quinn, and Sarita. And I pray that you all will come back so we can continue this conversation. It's the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. And until tomorrow, everybody, it's a blessing to be in your box. Bye, y'all.